Hectandum Caterpillar. How heavy machinery built a global empire. Picture this. Every major construction project you've ever seen, from skyscrapers piercing city skylines to highways connecting continents, has likely been touched by the distinctive yellow machines of one company. Caterpillar didn't just build heavy equipment, they built the modern world itself. From the Great Depression's darkest days to today's most ambitious mega projects, those iconic yellow machines have moved more earth, lifted more steel, and powered more progress than any other brand in history. This is the story of how a merger between two struggling tractor companies in 1925 created a global empire that literally reshaped the planet, one bulldozer blade at a time. The Caterpillar story begins in the agricultural heartland of America, where two rivals were locked in fierce competition that nearly destroyed them both. In Peoria, Illinois, the Holt Manufacturing Company and the CL Best Tractor Company had been bleeding money fighting over the same customers in the farming equipment business. Benjamin Holt had already made his mark by developing the first commercially successful crawler tractor in 1904. Replacing wheels with continuous tracks that could navigate soft ground without getting stuck. He called his invention the Caterpillar because a photographer remarked that it crawled like a caterpillar across the field. But by 1925, both companies were hemorrhaging cash and facing bankruptcy. Instead of watching each other die, they chose to merge on April 15, 1925, creating the Caterpillar Tractor Company with combined annual sales of $45 million. The new company immediately controlled 60% of the crawler tractor market worldwide and established its headquarters in Peoria, which remains its spiritual home nearly a century later. What transformed Caterpillar from a regional farm equipment maker into a global powerhouse was timing that couldn't have been better, or worse, depending on your perspective. When the Great Depression struck in 1929, most companies were fighting for survival, but Caterpillar saw opportunity in devastation. President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal programs required massive infrastructure projects to put Americans back to work, and every dam, highway, and bridge needed heavy machinery. Caterpillar's machines became the workhorses of the Works Progress Administration, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Tennessee Valley Authority. While unemployment soared past 25%, Caterpillar was hiring engineers and expanding production. The company's revenue actually grew during the worst economic crisis in American history, jumping from $60 million in 1929 to over $100 million by 1937. The iconic yellow paint scheme was introduced during this period, making Caterpillar machines instantly recognizable on job sites across America. More importantly, these Depression-era projects proved that Caterpillar could handle the biggest, most demanding construction challenges in the world. World War II transformed Caterpillar from an American success story into an indispensable global force. The United States military quickly realized that modern warfare required unprecedented logistical capabilities. Airfields had to be carved out of jungles, supply roads built across mountains, and defensive positions constructed under enemy fire. Caterpillar's D7 bulldozer became as crucial to Allied victory as tanks or fighter planes. In the Pacific Theater, Navy Seabees used Caterpillar equipment to build over 100 airfields, enabling the island-hopping campaign that brought American forces within striking distance of Japan. The famous Burma Road, connecting China to Allied supply lines, was carved through impossible mountain terrain using primarily Caterpillar machinery. General Douglas MacArthur himself declared that the bulldozer won the war in the Pacific, shortening the conflict by at least 2 years. Caterpillar produced over 50,000 machines for the war effort, generating revenues of $450 million between 1941 and 1945. More importantly, military personnel who operated these machines returned home as evangelists for the Caterpillar brand, seeding the post-war construction boom with experienced operators who knew exactly which equipment could get the job done. The post-war economic expansion turned Caterpillar into a global empire as the world embarked on the largest infrastructure building spree in human history. The interstate highway system, launched in 1956, required earth-moving on a scale never before attempted. Over 47,000 miles of roads cutting through every type of terrain imaginable. Caterpillar's new D9 bulldozer, weighing 49 tons and powered by a 400 horsepower engine, could move mountains literally and figuratively.
The company established its first overseas manufacturing plant in the United Kingdom in 1951, followed by Brazil in 1954 and India in 1956. This global expansion strategy proved brilliant as newly independent nations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America launched ambitious development programs. The Aswan High Dam in Egypt, the Trans-Canada Highway, and Australia's Snowy Mountain Scheme all relied heavily on Caterpillar equipment. By 1960, the company employed over 60,000 people worldwide and generated revenues exceeding $1 billion annually. The trademark CAT logo was introduced in 1957, becoming one of the most recognized industrial brands on Earth. The 1960s and 1970s saw Caterpillar perfect the art of building machines for projects that seemed to defy human capability. When President John F. Kennedy announced the goal of landing on the moon, NASA turned to modified Caterpillar equipment to build the massive vehicle assembly building at Kennedy Space Center, still one of the largest buildings in the world by volume. The Alaska Pipeline, stretching 800 miles across some of the most hostile terrain on Earth, was constructed almost entirely with Caterpillar machinery operating in temperatures that dropped to 60 degrees below zero. The company's 992 wheel loader, introduced in 1968, could scoop up 9 cubic yards of material in a single bite, revolutionizing mining operations worldwide. Strip mining for coal became economically viable on a massive scale thanks to Caterpillar's giant excavators and off-highway trucks. The opening of China in 1972 presented enormous opportunities as the world's most populous nation began modernizing its infrastructure after decades of isolation. Caterpillar established relationships with Chinese manufacturers that would prove crucial in later decades, even as the company maintained its technological edge through continuous innovation. The 1980s brought Caterpillar face-to-face with its greatest existential crisis since the Great Depression, testing whether the company could adapt to a radically changed global economy. Japanese competitors like Komatsu launched a brutal price war, offering similar equipment at 30% lower cost, while American industrial companies struggled with high labor costs and outdated manufacturing processes. Caterpillar's stock price collapsed from $60 to under $20 as revenues plummeted from over $9 billion to $6 billion between 1981 and 1983. The company was forced to close multiple plants, lay off nearly 60,000 employees, and completely restructure its operations. But instead of retreating, Caterpillar embarked on the most comprehensive transformation in its history. The company invested over $8 billion in new manufacturing technology, implementing lean production methods and flexible manufacturing systems that could quickly adapt to changing market demands. New CEO George Schaefer moved production to lower-cost locations worldwide while maintaining engineering excellence in Peoria. The 6x3000 series wheel loaders, introduced in 1986, incorporated advanced hydraulics and computer controls that made operators dramatically more productive. By 1988, Caterpillar had not only survived but emerged stronger, with profit margins actually higher than before the crisis.
The fall of the Berlin Wall and collapse of the Soviet Union opened vast new markets, just as Caterpillar perfected its global manufacturing strategy. Eastern European countries needed to rebuild crumbling infrastructure, while former Soviet republics required entirely new transportation networks and industrial facilities. Caterpillar's decision to establish manufacturing plants in developing countries paid enormous dividends as labor costs remained competitive while quality improved. The company's breakthrough 707 off-highway truck, capable of hauling 100 tons of material, revolutionized large-scale mining operations in Australia, Chile, and South Africa. Computer-controlled systems became standard across the product line, allowing single operators to accomplish work that previously required entire crews. The 1990s also saw Caterpillar diversify beyond construction equipment into power generation, acquiring engine manufacturer Perkins in 1997 and expanding into natural gas and diesel power plants. When China began its explosive economic growth in the late 1990s, Caterpillar was perfectly positioned with local manufacturing capability and relationships built over 25 years. Annual revenues surged past $15 billion by 1999, with international sales accounting for over half the total for the first time in company history. The 21st century transformed Caterpillar into something far beyond a machinery manufacturer. They became the essential partner for humanity's most ambitious projects. The Three Gorges Dam in China, still the world's largest power station by capacity, required Caterpillar equipment working around the clock for over a decade. The expansion of the Panama Canal, doubling the waterway's capacity to handle massive container ships, relied on Caterpillar's largest excavators and haulers working in challenging marine conditions. Modern mining operations extract millions of tons of material daily using autonomous Caterpillar trucks guided by GPS and artificial intelligence, operating unmanned in remote locations across 6 continents. The company's CAT 797F haul truck stands 24 feet tall and can carry 400 tons of material powered by a 4,000 horsepower engine that generates more power than a Formula One race car. Hurricane Katrina's aftermath saw over 3,000 Caterpillar machines deployed for cleanup and rebuilding efforts, while the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami response relied heavily on CAT equipment to clear debris and restore infrastructure. The global financial crisis of 2008 initially hammered demand, but emerging markets continued growing, and Caterpillar's diversified geographic presence cushioned the impact. Today, Caterpillar stands as the undisputed emperor of earth-moving, with yellow machines working on every continent and annual revenues exceeding $60 billion. The company operates manufacturing facilities in 20 countries, employs over 100,000 people worldwide, and generates more revenue than many national economies. Modern CAT equipment incorporates satellite guidance systems that can grade surfaces to within millimeter accuracy, reducing project timelines and costs dramatically. The autonomous mining trucks operating in Australia's Pilbara region represent the future of heavy equipment, with unmanned machines working continuously under computer control to extract iron ore that feeds steel mills across Asia. Caterpillar's digital transformation includes predictive maintenance systems that monitor machine health in real time, preventing breakdowns before they occur, and maximizing uptime for customers operating on tight schedules. The company's commitment to sustainability has produced hybrid and electric machines for urban construction sites where noise and emissions matter, while their rebuilt equipment programs extend machine life cycles and reduce environmental impact. From the newest smart cities in Southeast Asia to renewable energy projects in remote deserts, Caterpillar equipment continues building the infrastructure that connects and powers human civilization. The merger of 2 struggling tractor companies in Peoria has created a global empire that literally moves mountains, proving that some businesses don't just adapt to change, they create the change that reshapes the entire world.